Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa,
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
and we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs. Hey, welcome in. It's the Arrowhead Addict podcast. It is Thursday, July 11th. My name is Patrick Allen, and it has been a minute. This is my first Arrowhead Addict podcast since May, and it is July. I'm really excited to be back. I missed you all. Fire off in the chat. Going to be here today. Verderam is on a well-deserved vacation. Obviously, he was covering for me while I was out. He's going to come back. He and I will link back up, and we'll have your regular Thursday show back for you. But until then, trying to get you guys all ready here for training camp and for the coming season, because the Chiefs are, they're right back in the thick in the AFC West, and a lot of teams are making moves, and they're going to try to catch up to Kansas City. So I'm going to have my guy Jason Reed from Bolt Beat, among other places, on today to talk us through what's going on with the Chargers, what's going on with Harbugh, and all that noise. But I'm just fired up to be back on the podcast for all 4 of you that are watching out there right now, because it is July, and just like the Chiefs, who are not yet in training camp, I know many of you are using this time to tune out of football for a little while, take a vacation, but that's okay. For you sickos out there, for you degenerates, for those people who need Chiefs football 3-4 times a week, podcasts in July when there's no news, when there's nothing going on, we are here for you, and we're going to continue to deliver the goods. So it's going to be a fun show today. Like I said, we're going to break down some of the news. We're going to talk to Jason Reed, and let's get into it. But I'm happy to be back. I guess before I go any further, obviously I was gone because I had a kid. His name is Rory, as you all knew. He was on the way. And we're just over the moon. Everything went great. I know some of you have asked, some of you, the members in the Discord, private Discord that we have for the Arrowhead Addict team. And it went great. It was a crazy experience. I was really grateful to have the lengthy parental leave that I had to just spend time with Rory and bond with him. He's beautiful. He's super cute. My favorite thing in the world is for him to nap on my chest right now, but he's growing. He is 6 weeks old as of yesterday. So it's crazy how fast they grow up. Shout out to Jose in the chat, welcoming me back. I appreciate you, brother. Mike says NFL Network just ranked the Chargers number 32 on the quarterback skill group. We're going to talk about that. So this is going to be a lot of fun. It's really good to see all you guys, and thank you for supporting the show while I was gone and now that I'm back. And, it's a tough break for you guys that I'm back, but we're going to do the best we can. All right. Before we get any further, Caesars Sportsbook is looking to cover your first bet of up to $1,000. New customers will get a second chance bet up to $1,000 if you sign up for our promo code ARROW1000. That means if your first bet loses, you will get your full wager returned as a bonus bet up to $1,000. Caesars offers daily profit boosts as well as Caesars Rewards credits on every wager, which can be redeemed for bonuses, sports tickets, and other VIP experiences. Signing up with our code Arrow1000 not only covers your first bet, but it also gets you access to their fantastic rewards program. If you're looking to join Caesars, go download the app and register with our promo code Arrow1000 and make sure your first bet is covered. This is an offer that's only available to new customers who are 21 and older and physically present in a legal gambling state. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Check out the episode description for the full terms to see if you qualify. Hey, Jack. Jack in the chat says, well, glad you're back. It's really tough when you don't have nowhere to get legitimate information. Good to see you. Appreciate you, sir. I appreciate you very much. let's get into there's not, like I said, there's not a lot of Chiefs news right now, but if you're not like following the schedule crazily, training camp is coming. The Chiefs are right now, they're the last couple of days, they've been packing up the trucks and they're going to, the equipment guys, they're all in training camp mode already. They're going to be heading to Missouri Western State University and, of course, St. Joseph's, Missouri. And players will start reporting the week of the 15th. And then the first practice will be on Sunday, July 21st. So just a couple weeks away, 10 days away even from that. You can go. Almost all of the practices are open to the public. There's a couple that aren't. I think there's one that's like for season ticket holders. If you're looking for more information on that, head on over to kcchiefs.com. They've got a whole training camp section. There's videos and articles and all that stuff. And you can dive in and see what the Chiefs are doing, how they're getting prepared for camp. And, this is a fun time of year. If you're a sicko like me, I watch the preseason games, man. I want to see the young guys. I want to see the roster bubble guys. I want to see the guys that are going to end up on the practice squad. And then like maybe they'll end up, on the team or getting called up at some point. I love it. There's some interesting position battles. And of course, we'll be breaking that all down for you all summer long, preseason as well. So excited for training camp. Football is almost back, baby. It's kind of funny. If you guys notice, like I've seen some people say, well, it feels like it's been so long since we've had NFL. As a Chiefs fan, since we go to the Super Bowl every year, I feel like the offseason is really short. If you think about it, if you don't make the playoffs, you're done in like January. And we've been playing into February a lot, or very late January. And then it's just like you turn around and it's the draft, it's just fast and furious. Whereas everybody else, like the people that don't make the playoffs, they have that whole month where they don't have anything going on. So it probably feels a lot longer for them. I used to anguish over back when the Chiefs were trash during like the Herm Edwards era. I hated the offseason. Now I like doing the podcast stuff. I just need a breather. And that's about all I get, to be honest with you. So it's really great to have such a shortened offseason. And if they add another game, which they've been talking about doing and getting in the Super Bowl and Presidents, all that stuff, the hub basically a national holiday, it's going to be even shorter. So it's going to be great. And then somebody mentioned in the chat, and we're going to talk about this with Jason in a minute as well, the positional skill rankings by Bill Barnwell over at ESPN. I love Bill Barnwell stuff. Most of his stuff is behind the paywall, so you have to subscribe to ESPN Plus. I know everybody's after your money these days, us included, with subscriptions and memberships and things like that. So if you're going to subscribe to one thing, subscribe to the Arrowhead Addict podcast and support the show. But if you're going to subscribe to two things, I really like ESPN Plus. There's a lot of really great sports content, behind that paywall on ESPN Plus, documentaries and things like that you can watch. And believe me, with not a lot of sports going on and me being on paternal leave, I've been diving into some of that stuff. I watched the whole OJ documentary, which I didn't get to see when it came out. So I recommend it. But you get some really interesting articles on the site by some of their premium writers over at ESPN. And I think Bill Barnwell is as good as they come. He puts out huge, like massive, long articles all season long. They're really well thought out, and they're a little bit different than you get other places, which I really appreciate. He finds interesting ways to spin the topics. And I just really recommend it. So what he's done in this one is he's ranked the NFL's best skill position. So running back, wide receiver, tight end groups. So which team of those three groups has the best? And the Chiefs finished 14th in those rankings. They were 19th in 2023 and 16th in 2022. And I'll tell you what he wrote about the Chiefs. And we'll talk about the Chargers with Jason. He said, it can't be as bad as it was last year. Kansas City's wide receiver position posted the worst drop rate of the past decade. And when that regressed toward the mean during the playoffs, the offense was good enough to win the Super Bowl. Wideout has been perhaps the only source of consternation with this team since trading away Tyreek Hill, but the roster is deeper than it was in 2023. The Chiefs won't be relying on Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney. Marquise Brown, wildly efficient at times with the Ravens and Cardinals, is an upgrade over Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Can the young guys be the building blocks? Rashee Rice is likely to face some sort of suspension for off-field misconduct, which limits his chance to break out in year two. I would argue he broke out in year one, but I get what he's saying. Rookie first rounder Xavier Worthy. His range of outcomes includes everyone from Tyreek Hill to Deshaun Jackson on the high end, and Troy Williamson and John Ross on the low end, who might be more of a situational player than an immediate every down starter. The advantage here is more about depth than any other player being a star. The Chiefs have 3 potential standout wide receivers and only need one of them to be an impact player at any given time. Anything they get from Tony and company would be an added bonus. There's a little bit more he writes about the Chiefs. You should subscribe, check it out. But what do you guys in the chat think? What do you think about the Chiefs being 14th there? Shout out to Jason, says, what's up, Pat? Ian says, Chiefs Kingdom, what's up, man? My guy, Angry Drunken German. We're almost there, almost preseason. What's up, buddy? Good to see you as well. I think, and I don't have the full list in front of me right now, the 49ers were number one, and you can think about the guys they got in Deebo Samuel, Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey. It's not surprising that they would be number one. I think this is fair for the Chiefs. I mean, like Isaiah Pacheco, Barnwell talks about Pacheco in the last paragraph of that Chiefs write-up, and he thinks he's about a top 10 back. I think he's right there around 10. I think Pacheco still has some room to grow, and I hope he does that this year. But he's not somebody that strikes fear into defenses like somebody like Christian McCaffrey. So, and it's the same thing at the wide receiver position, right? Outside of Travis Kelce, Marquise Brown's a nice player. Hopefully he can take the leap with the Chiefs. But there's nobody that really terrifies you yet. So I think that this is a fair kind of middle of the pack of with their weapons. Obviously, Kelce is. He mentions Kelce, like a down year for Kelce is like a great year from TJ Hawkinson, which is true. That's what happens when you're a Hall of Fame tight end. But aside from the Chiefs rankings here, and they have, of course, have a chance to move up these rankings, things could change fast. The Chargers are ranked 32, dead last at the skill positions, and the Broncos are number 30, and the Raiders are number 23. So that bodes well if Barnwell's right, and I like to think that he is. That bodes well for the Chiefs this year in terms of winning the division. They have a really difficult schedule, but if they can manage to sweep the AFC West, which they've done in the past, it's a little bit harder now because you have better coaches. You get your 6 wins right there, and you beat up on some of the other bad teams on your schedule, and you're already at double-digit wins. But it's not like we're all sitting around worried about whether or not the Chiefs are going to make the playoffs anyway, but it's something that's nice to think about when you know you've got to survive a really tough schedule. But let me know in the chat what you guys think of those rankings. Do you think the Chiefs should be higher? Do you think they should be lower? And make sure you hit the like button. If you're watching on YouTube, give me some love. Let's get the word out to more Chiefs fans that we don't have an off season here at Arrowhead Addict, and we're still talking Chiefs. All right, awesome. Let's bring in my guy, Jason Reed, from over at boltbeat.com, among other places. We're talking with the enemy. You guys, listen, Jason is a coworker of mine, all right, here at Fanside. He's a full-time employee. I would appreciate it if you keep the trolling to a professional level, all right? Like no cheap shots. He's a big boy. He can take it. But let's not get out of hand here. Shout out to Tony, says, welcome back, Patrick. Hope everyone is happy and healthy. They are, man. I was just up playing with them before the podcast. It was very difficult to pry me away. Jason, what's up, man? How you doing?
Good. We'll see how this podcast spot goes, and then maybe I'll answer that question a little bit more after the fact. But doing good so far on this beautiful Thursday. Yeah,
well, just don't go to HR on me, okay? Listen, so Jason, why don't you explain to everybody? Obviously, you're the editor-in-chief over there at Boltbeat and have been for some time now, running a great Chargers site for all 4 of the Chargers fans. But what else do you do around Fansided?
Yeah, recently promoted to a content director this year, helping out across the NFL division. That includes, some Chiefs content here and there. I might not write it myself, but my fingerprints are on it behind the scenes at least a little bit. So, yeah, just doing content. Been on Boltbeat for 4 years now. You make fun of the 4 fans. I think we got like 35,000 Twitter followers. Or X followers, excuse me. It might not be Arrowhead Addict levels yet, but there's more Charger fans than you give credit for. That's for sure.
Most definitely. Yeah, I think a lot of those are bots, but we'll talk about that later. My favorite argument back when I ran Arrowhead Addict, and I ran it a little bit differently than Matt Connor does. I was very heavy into trolling, having fun, with this. Not that Matt doesn't have fun, but he's a little bit more of a straight arrow than I was. The argument that I would always get whenever I'll fully admit the Chargers only have 4 fans is the lowest hanging fruit out there, and it's not imaginative at all. But my favorite argument was always when they were in San Diego. No, but it's just people don't go to the stadium because there's still so much to do around. That was the one argument I got about San Diego, was it's so beautiful that they don't have to go to the football stadium, but it doesn't mean they're not fans. And then the other argument was there's a lot of military transplants in San Diego. And so there's fans of other teams. This term didn't exist back then, but I think these days people would have said that was copium. What's your take on the old? Are you tired of hearing that jab at Chargers fans?
I mean, it comes with the territory. I don't take it too personally. I think some of it might have some truth on a very, very small scale. I think the fact of the matter is this is a franchise that doesn't have a lot of winning in its history, and never really gave San Diego, outside of, the Air Coryell times, and then obviously in the mid 2000s, didn't give them sustained success. So a city like San Diego wasn't going to flock to them. I mean, look at the Padres. They were bad for however many years. Now they're good and their fans are showing up. Those are the same fans that, theoretically should have been with the Chargers. The only little excuse I have that you might laugh at is when opposing fans would take over the soccer stadium when they played at the StubHub Center before moving to SoFi Stadium. That was like a legitimate issue because there was only 30,000 seats. And if you live in Southern California, you know that the tickets to those games were outrageous. I only went to one game. It was against the Arizona Cardinals, which also don't really have a fan base. And it was like $300 for like the cheapest ticket. So when that happened, it made a lot more sense for Steelers fans in Southern California, because there's still a lot of them. Southern California is a diverse place, to pay those exorbitant fees to go see their team. It's a once every 8 years situation. Whereas Charger fans were pissed off at the team for moving. They weren't going to pay $300. And since they moved to SoFi, I think we've seen a little bit better of a split. Don't get me wrong. When the Raiders come to town, the Cowboys come to town, it's still 75-25. But we haven't seen like the random, Packers fans taking over SoFi Stadium yet, at least. So we'll see how it goes with Harbaugh and Herbert. Maybe we can get those numbers up a little bit. But it's at least a little bit better in SoFi.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, when you don't have that success, the Chiefs didn't have success for a long time, but they had a foundation of being in Super Bowl I, winning Super Bowl IV, really dominating a smaller town with a sport that was really, really popular. And, they found ways that, like the tailgating experience, they really found ways to make it fun outside of the winning, which wasn't happening. And I think you're right. Like, look, things could change quickly. I mean, the Chiefs didn't win squat, in the 70s and 80s, had some success in the 90s, then they stunk again, and look at them now. So you never know when a team's going to get the right combination and turn things around. So hopefully that doesn't happen with the Chargers, but the fans are out there, and you're right. You got to give them a reason to let their flags fly a little bit. All right. Well, so listen, I wanted to talk to you about all things Chargers to get the Chiefs fans out there a good primer to understand we're going to be playing you twice, as we do every year, and you've got a new coach and a lot of new faces coming in. It's an era of transition. I think it's really great to understand what the AFC West landscape is going to look like. I believe our guy Adam Best on Wednesday of next week, or maybe it was yesterday, they're covering the Broncos. So this is really great timing. So what do you make of the Bill Barnwell rankings about that group? Obviously, it's rough, man. I mean, you guys lost. Here's what I'm going to tell you what Barnwell wrote about the Chargers. They were 5th last year in these rankings and 6th the year before. Here's what Barnwell wrote. He said, gulp, virtually every single significant player who placed the Chargers in the top 5 before last season took a major step backward, left town, or were replaced with a player of a similar caliber. The most notable player who remains is Quentin Johnston, who averaged 0.94 yards per route run as a rookie, even after Mike Williams' injury cleared out a spot in the starting lineup. The only first-round wideouts since 2007 who were worse in their rookie campaigns were Nelson Aguilar and Darius Hayward-Bay. Remember him? Even if you're wildly optimistic about Joshua Palmer, this isn't an opposing group. The Chargers took flyers on former Ravens backfield with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, both of whom have significant injury histories. The leading wideouts beyond Palmer and Johnson are DJ Chark and second-round pick Ladd McConkey, who has been hyped into a feature role out of sheer desperation. Do you think so what do you think, Jason? Do you think the Chargers made the right decision moving on from Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Austin Eckler?
Well, big picture, my response to that, I'll just read you a headline that I wrote in response to Bill Barnwell's article. Latest ESPN rankings highlight sobering reality for the Chargers in 2024. Barnwell's right. Charger fans hate it. I'm sorry if there's any Charger fans tuning in, listening to this. Like, I know we want to look at the glass half full with everything, but the fact of the matter is this is the worst skill position group in the sport. I mean, the wide receiver room is horrible. It's not looking great. You know, you need your star quarterback to elevate guys, much like you guys have had in the past, Chiefs. As far as the moves they made, though, was it the right decision, the wrong decision? I think with Mike Williams and Austin Eckler, yes. Mike Williams, you know, injury history. Former GM Tom Telesco left the team in a horrible situation with the salary cap. They decided to go all in with the core last season, did a bunch of restructures to get under the cap, and that caused the cap situation this offseason to be horrendous, where they pretty much had to get rid of 2 of the 4, with the 4 being Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Joey Bosa, or Khalil Mack. So Williams was always like an obvious cut candidate just because of his injury history. Eckler, as much of a big name as he is, can't really run the ball anymore. I mean, he even said in an interview that him and the Chargers decided to part ways because they want someone who could run the ball 300 times a year, and that's just not who he is. Like, sorry, the Chargers wanted a running back who could run. I mean, I don't know what else you want there. Keenan stuff, I mean, instant reaction was terrible just because they need him out of necessity. But it makes sense when you consider all of the ancillary stuff behind the scenes. Both sides, you know, confirmed that he wasn't willing to take a pay cut. They offered him an extension where, you know, his salary cap hit would be a little bit less this year, but he would get money future years, but it wasn't quite the money he was looking for. He didn't want to do any of the restructures, whereas Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack were both willing to do that. So I think it was just a case of they kept the 2 guys who were willing to play ball, and Keenan, you know, they just were forced to part ways. So it sucks. It's kind of the nature of business. In the perfect world, he would still be on the team right now, but I feel like they kind of had to do it. That doesn't make the situation any better. I mean, I'm a big fan of Ladd in the second round, and he'll probably put up good numbers out of sheer necessity, but I don't know. This team doesn't have a guy who would be more than like a wide receiver 3 on a good team like the 49ers.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's a rebuilding process. I mean, that's what it is. And you and I were chatting yesterday about, obviously now I buried the lead a little bit here. The Chargers brought in Harbugh to take this team over, coming off, winning a national championship at Michigan, and has had an insane track record. Pretty much has won everywhere he's gone, no matter the odds or the circumstances, and had a really good run in the NFL. He wasn't able to get a Super Bowl because of his own brother, but did a really incredible job. Really kind of even benefited the Chiefs a little bit because he kind of helped fix Alex Smith, who then ended up in Kansas City and started Kansas City off winning again. So how did Chargers fans react to this hire? Were there any like Brandon Staley, like ride or dies still out there? Or was everybody pretty much ready to move on?
No, I mean, Staley was the most despised person in Los Angeles. It felt like it couldn't have gone worse for him towards the end there. It was just wasn't a fit for whatever reason. You know, it was time to move on. As far as Harbaugh, I mean, it was pretty well accepted across the board. I think there were some people who were trying to be cute and, wanted Ben Johnson from Detroit or wanted, Mike Vrabel from Tennessee. At the end of the day, Harbaugh was the guy all along, dating back to like November before they even went on their national title run, before Staley was even fired. Like, the writing was on the wall. Mike Greenberg went on Get Up and was talking about how Harbaugh has an immense love for Justin Herbert. And just those things, when you're in this industry, you kind of know, like, people like Greeny don't just say things to say them. They're usually for a reason. And as soon as he said that, it was like, oh, okay, these guys are going to be interested in each other. And, Harbaugh had all his stuff going on with Michigan and the sign stealing scandal and all that stuff. So the writing was on the wall. And I think Charger fans were just hoping the whole time that the Chargers didn't butcher it, that the Spanos family didn't cheap out on Harbaugh. And credit to them, they haven't really cheaped out since moving to Los Angeles. They're hiring Harbaugh. They paid him a lot of money. They're opening a brand new training facility this week, actually. That was like $250 million to build. So the Spanos family's finally pouring money into the team outside of just the roster. So it was great. It was very celebrated. I mean, Charger fans hype up everything every offseason, so you can only imagine how they hyped up Harbaugh.
Yeah, man, I saw the tweet and the video that they made about that new training facility. I think it's 150,000 square feet or maybe 200,000. I mean, it is. They've got like a two floor meeting room. I mean, it is. They definitely didn't spare any expense on that. It looks pretty state of the art and pretty nice. And I think it's helpful to do those types of things to feel like a winner when you go to work. And the Chiefs have their own issues with their facilities and trying to get those redone, but we'll talk about that another day. Look, I'll say this. It's not a great roster, and you and I talked about this the other day. I think that I would not be surprised if the Chargers have success this year, despite how bleak things might look. And I say that because I've gone through it with the Chiefs. The Chiefs they won 2 games in 2012, and then they went and they got Andy Reid. And the one thing that they didn't have in 2012 that they had in 2013 was a quarterback. They went and they got Alex Smith. That was like the main significant move that they made. Now, look, the Chargers already have a quarterback, and he's a much higher ceiling, I think, than Alex Smith did in his career. So, but if you listen to this roster, Andy Reid's first year with the Chiefs, they went 11-5, and they made the playoffs. This is they had Alex Smith at quarterback. Now, they did have Jamal Charles, who's incredible, but the guys behind him, Niall Davis, Cyrus Gray, okay? Their wide receivers were Dwayne Bowe, who was nearing the end, but was still pretty good. Donnie Avery, who was toast. Junior Hemingway, A.J. Jenkins, and Dexter McCluster. At tight end, they drafted Travis Kelce, but he immediately got hurt. So they had Anthony Fasano, Richard Gordon, and Sean McGrath. I mean, when you look at those offensive weapons, obviously Jamal Charles stands out. He was the only, superstar that they had. It's better, I think, than the group that the Chargers have, but not by a lot. I mean, those tight ends are nobodies. Fasano had a fine career, but nobody was scared of him. So, and now look, they had a pretty decent offensive line at that time, and they had a pretty decent defense. And we're going to talk about the Chargers defense in a little bit, but I think when you get a coach in there who knows what they're doing, who can get everybody organized, who's disciplined, which I don't think Staley was. I think it's a big part of the problem with him. Harbaugh is going to, and I've mentioned this on the show before, as an Ohio State fan, that dude, he does not care about anything other than winning. And if he is able to make the Chargers run the ball well, he'll run the ball 40 times in a row. He doesn't care. He does not care. If you can't stop something that his team is doing, he will lean into it. And I think a lot of NFL coaches get cute. I know the Chiefs have won a lot of games where I was like, oh man, we can't stop the run, like a couple of years ago. And teams would then they would come out and they'd throw on first and second down. And I'm like, these people are insane. They're getting 7 yards of carry against us. And then they get like a tip pass and we get the ball, so I think there's a lot to look forward to. How do you feel about the hire yourself? Do you think this is it, that he's going to be the guy that really kind of gets you back to the success that you were having with like Norv Turner and Marty Schottenheimer?
Yeah, I mean, the proof is in the pudding that he should be able to. This probably isn't an instant thing. There's the roster is not in a place to necessarily contend for a Super Bowl right away. But looking at like the 5-year window, I think there's real potential for the Chargers to make some noise. And obviously, the ultimate goal is a Super Bowl. And to say, yeah, they definitely will win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years, like that's silly. But can they at least be in the conversation and be a legitimate part of the conversation in the next 5 years? I think so. I think if you look at every contending team for the most part, I mean, obviously there's always some exceptions, but the things they always have is an elite head coach and an elite quarterback and a really good head coach. I mean, the Chiefs have that with Mahomes and Andy Reid. Doug Peterson, even his run was really good that year. Granted, Nick Foles not really an elite quarterback, but, they made it work. But the 49ers, Shanahan's great. Brock Purdy, I think's really underrated. I don't understand why people don't want to give him his flowers, but you need those two, foundational things. And they usually need at least one other like elite thing, whether it be an elite pass rush, an elite secondary, whatever the case is. I think the Chargers already have 2 of them, and they have 2 of the best in the league. And, they just have to put the pieces around them now. So anything can happen, obviously. Injuries happen. You could stumble into a 4th rounder who's an all-pro, and then the window might get accelerated. But they have the foundation in place in the next 5 years to maybe be in an AFC championship game. And who knows what happens. It sucks that they're in the same division as the Chiefs, or else this prediction would be a lot easier to map out. But I do think that Harbaugh can turn it around. And, I guess we just got to wait and see. He's won everywhere else, so I don't have any reason to think he won't here, long term.
Yeah, again, if they get him the personnel, they're going to be a problem. Well, let's stick on the offensive side of the ball. We mentioned that the not so glowing review of Quentin Johnston's rookie season. He was the 21st pick in 2023. What's your confidence level that he can turn it around in year two?
It depends. If the question's like confidence level that he can play like a first round receiver, that who they thought he was when they draft him, that answer is almost zero. I just don't think he has the makings of being a wide receiver one, of being a field tilter, for lack of a better phrase. I don't think that's in him. I'm a little bit optimistic that he can be better in his sophomore year, mostly because former offensive coordinator Kellen Moore could not have used him worse in his rookie season. Mike Williams goes down with the injury in week 3, and then they just throw Quentin Johnston into being the X receiver on offense, which if you watch Johnston tape makes no sense. Like on paper, yeah, he's a great X receiver. He's 6'4" and he runs, a 4.4 40, whatever it is. But he can't really make contested catches. He's not great at like physical separation or anything. He's someone who needs the ball near the line of scrimmage and can make guys miss. And there was one game all year last year where they actually used him like that. And it was against the Bears. And it was a game where I believe Keenan was hurt. Joshua Palmer got hurt early on. So they just kind of fed Quentin near the line of scrimmage. And he had, in my opinion, his best game of the year. So I think this new coaching staff will understand that and utilize him better so he's more productive. But I don't think he's ever going to live up to being the 21st pick. And he's never going to shake the fact that he was picked before Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers. I don't think he ever lives up to those guys. But can he be like a solid wide receiver 3 slot guy? I think so. And this year, if he doesn't do it this year, I don't think it's ever going to happen. So he's definitely someone to watch, and we'll see if the new coaching staff can unlock him.
Yeah, if anybody can, I think Harbaugh will find a way to get the potential out of him. But you're right, like it's that year too. Like if they're a first round receiver and they don't do anything in the first year, it's like, okay, if they don't do anything after year 2, there's very few examples of receivers taking that high. I think Devontae Adams got off to a slow start, but usually it's no bueno. And it just is what it is. You roll the dice when you take guys that high, no matter what position you take. Shout out to Rob Miller for the super chat. Appreciate you, Rob. Says, Jason, I'll be happy to see you all destroy the Raiders and donkeys, and we can both go to the playoffs. That's a very kind comment. I'd take that. I probably hate the Chargers the least out of the other division rivals, so I guess I could live with that. So, all right, what about the other receivers? Between, obviously, if you've kind of spoken on Johnston now, but like Joshua Palmer and McConkey, like who's going to be the number 1 receiver for this team this season?
I don't know if they have necessarily a clear-cut wide receiver 1. I think numbers-wise, McConkey might finish with the best numbers just because the type of receiver he is. He's shifty, near the line of scrimmage, creates separation. He's not someone you're going to put on the boundary and, kind of throw him on a go route and he's going to burn the defense or anything. But I just think based on the type of receiver he is and how Justin Herbert is as a quarterback and how this offense is probably going to be called, I think he's just the guy who might get the most stats, the most production. I think Joshua Palmer's the best receiver in year 1, at least. I think he's very underrated. I don't think he's by any means like a true wide receiver 1, but I think he's someone who, if he can stay healthy and stay on the field, can actually prove a lot of people wrong. And like, I think best case scenario, he could be like he's not the same type of receiver, but be like a Mike Williams, where he's a kind of not a wide receiver 1, but maybe a little bit of an overqualified wide receiver 2. I think that's his ceiling in the league. And he's shown flashes of having that ceiling and having that potential. So I'm pretty high on him. I bought a signed rookie card of his with like a jersey patch for like $10 because his stock was at an all-time low. So they were super cheap. So I'm kind of hoping for the rebound, but yeah, I think Palmer's the most talented, but I think McConkey has the best stats. And I think it'll be matchup dependent. That's going to be Harbaugh and Roman's thing. They just gotta go based off the matchup, Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think it's probably McConkey. I loved him coming out. I was really annoyed when he went to the Chargers, but as also an avid fantasy football player, I have a lot of Ladd McConkey in my dynasty leagues, and I'm just so jacked up to have a competent coach, a receiver I believe in, and a good quarterback together. That's good news, I think, for McConkey. Just real quick side tangent. You mentioned, if Joshua Palmer can stay healthy. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this, but like
we always joke on the show that like the Chargers training staff has got to be like the worst in the NFL because everybody's always hurt. And look, if any of those fine people ever come across this, I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. So I'm just going to put that out there. Although you guys did stab somebody in the lung. Okay. That worked out in favor of the team. So maybe that was all planned. But like, you hear something like that happen and you see, it just seems year after year after year with the Chargers, injuries. Whereas like the Chiefs have been pretty healthy for their major people and they have a well-regarded training staff. Is there any word among Charger fans about the training staff? Do they have a new training staff now under Harbaugh? Like what's the deal over there? What's happening?
So I have a long-winded answer to this that doesn't necessarily even single out the Chargers. First point, yes, they do have a new training staff. It's led by Ben Herbert, who Harbaugh brought with him from Michigan. I think his official title is like the lead strengthening coordinator, whatever it is. Guy seems very knowledgeable. They interviewed him. He had a press conference and he's talking about, grip strength and all these random things they're testing with players that, you and I would never think of. It seems like he's on like the science side of things, but he's also kind of like a musclehead where it's like, all right, we could hopefully get something going, be a little bit more durable. As far as the injury history, I think it's not just the Chargers. It's across multiple sports and it's all around similar teams. I think you get what you give in the sports industry. And if you look at teams, look at the Los Angeles Angels. I know this isn't a baseball podcast, but Mike Trout gets hurt. Shohei was getting hurt when he was on the Angels all the time. They have all the other off the field stuff that's happening that's, terrible with everything. And the outlier is kind of like, bad ownership that doesn't spend a lot on their team. A little anecdote. I was actually a bat boy for a minor league baseball team while I was in college. And when the Angels minor league affiliate was in town, I wouldn't say, their meals and stuff were necessarily the best. Now we're talking about 18-year-old kids and single A, but like that kind of stuff has a trickle down. And I think, whether it's the Mets in baseball, whether it's, the Clippers in basketball, it always seems to be like the little brother teams in the big markets, which the Chargers certainly are. But I think it's a top-down thing. I think the Chargers just haven't invested properly. And that's why I'm so stoked about this new training facility. It's like they're finally paying to, you get what you give. And if you're paying for these guys' health and little things, the meals they're eating, where they're doing their meetings, the surfaces they're practicing on, like it will have a return. And you might not have, it might not have an immediate where you can look at a spreadsheet and be like, oh, this results in this, but I believe it's a trickle down. So that's why I'm happy about the Harbaugh thing, the new era, the training facility, because it feels like we're finally turning a corner there. Because for a long time, the Chargers operated like a team that kind of pinched pennies and maybe weren't putting money into the right things. So I think that's my theory, at least. I don't know if it holds any water, but
look, I mean, there's certainly there's luck involved for everybody, right? Like, like when in not 2019 when Patrick Mahomes dislocated his knee, and like it just so happened that like he didn't move. And his center, who he was laying on top of, didn't move. And that helped for potentially them creating more damage, like things like that. And of course, it also helps if you have a coach who doesn't send like Mike Williams out to play in a meaningless game and the man like breaks his back, that helps as well. So yeah, you've checked a few of those boxes that you were a little bit worried about. By the way, somebody in the chat had a question. Oh, Lauren Shank says, which super stadium is better and why? SoFi or Allegiant? Have you been to Allegiant?
I have. I've seen Taylor Swift actually at Allegiant.
Yeah. That's cool. What did you think? I've been funny enough to the Super Bowl at both of those stadiums. I would lean SoFi. I thought SoFi was fantastic.
Little humble brag there about the Super Bowl. Yeah, I would lean SoFi too. My biggest gripe with both stadiums though is they are mazes. The whole second level of SoFi, which is where you enter at, is like suites along the side. So if you're in like the 200 level and you go in the wrong side, you have to like go up 2 levels, walk all the way around, and then go back down 2. It's just not intuitive. I even saw WrestleMania at SoFi, actually. It was the same problem. I had no idea where I was going. But I probably lean SoFi. I think the Oculus is awesome, and the noise they generate there. Sometimes with the Chargers, it's a little bit of a piped-in noise, but it still creates a cool environment for sure.
Yeah, it's a nice stadium. It's a kind of roomy. I like the big patio area that they have. Bright. I liked it. Allegiant was cool too, but it didn't feel as interesting to me, I guess, as SoFi did. Plus, I got to see Joe Burrow lose the Super Bowl in SoFi, which provided me with a very cathartic moment. Okay, so let's talk about the running game for the Chargers this year. That's like Harbaugh's like go-to, man. He likes to run the football. And I'm looking at the running back depth chart for the Chargers, and it's a little concerning if that's the goal. You got Gus Edwards, who I like. I think he's a good football player, but he's older. He's never really been a number one guy for anybody. J.K. Dobbins, obviously, you see the Ohio State helmet over my shoulder. Love J.K. Dobbins. Supremely talented when he's on the field, but has just an absolute horrid injury history since coming to the NFL. Cannot stay on the field. And he's coming off the dreaded Achilles tear, which almost nobody comes back from. And then Kimni, is that how you say it? Kimni?
It's Kimani.
Vidal? Kimani. Oh, did I maybe I spelled it wrong here. But Kimani Vidal, which makes me think of Vidal Sassoon for some reason. 6th round rookie. And then you got Isaiah Spiller, who's never really done anything with the opportunities that he's been given. Do you think Harbaugh's got the horses to achieve the rushing attack he wants this year?
I think they're going to have to. This is like a out of necessity thing. I'm not as sold on this running back room as most fans are. As we talked about the playmakers, I kind of gave that away. Gus Edwards is fine. J.K. Dobbins on paper is good, but as you mentioned, hurt all the time. And, there's just so many variables that we can't, predict, and that there's just you don't have a surefire thing like the Chiefs have with Isaiah Pacheco. You just don't have that. That being said, I believe that, General Manager Joe Horitz, he will make a move if he has to. He's been very public on the record saying, he's not going to shy away from in-season trades and making upgrades where it's needed, something Tom Telesco never did. He made one in-season trade for someone in his entire 10-year tenure. So I think if it's not working, they will force it to work. But I don't think you're going to get like the Ravens, Greg Roman offense. I think they'll throw the ball a little bit more. Justin Herbert's a lot better of a passer than J.J. McCarthy. So even if it's not working, they have a fallback. And that being said, Vidal, the 6th round pick, I'm huge on him. He looks like Austin Eckler light. He literally, little short guy, super bulky, good in the passing game, elusive. Like, I think that guy is going to be really, really good. Whether that happens this year in the future, who knows? But I think out of necessity, they'll find a way for it to work. Will it be an elite rushing attack? I don't think so.
Yeah, and look, Dobbins, I think they gave him like a $50,000 signing bonus. Like it was not a lot. So there's no downside for the Chargers on that. Like he's going to cost them nothing. He might not even make the team, but if he does start to develop and maybe it just his run of bad luck ends and he's able to be, it's just coming off that Achilles, man. We saw that happen to like Cam Akers, and guys just are really usually never the same, and especially the year after an Achilles. So when you combine everything else that he's had, but it's a total lottery ticket, a long odds lottery ticket. But if he should work out, and then you've got the rookie that you like, then you've got something. Now you're cooking with gas, at least in the running game. Great, really interesting question from my guy, Angry Drunken German. With Marty Schottenheimer's recent passing, I wonder if Chargers fans remember him fondly like Kansas City fans, or are you more critical due to him falling short like Chiefs fans? I mean, it was the same criticism of Marty when he was with San Diego as in Kansas City, which is he couldn't get it done in the playoffs. What's the sentiment about Marty from Chargers fans?
Marty didn't have enough time in San Diego, I think, to ever become for the fans to be critical of him. If he made the playoffs a few more times and lost, I think he'd be remembered a lot differently. But he was fired after that 14-2 season in 2006, the best season in franchise history. I know they made the Super Bowl in '94, but that 2006 team is one of the greatest teams to never make the Super Bowl, quite frankly, of any team. Like, that team shouldn't have lost to the Patriots. And so because the Chargers fired him and fans always viewed like the Chargers, the Spanos family did him dirty, he went down very beloved, as someone who, as a what if he got all those Norv Turner teams where, they made the AFC Championship and stuff, but who knows? Marty didn't have as much playoff success, but he's definitely remembered in a positive light, mostly for that 2006 team, which is when a lot of people became fans. I don't want to age myself, but like that was the first year of football I remember watching. So definitely remembered fondly.
I think it was a huge mistake to fire Marty Schottenheimer after that season. Norv Turner, whatever, he was fine. Those were some talented teams. Sometimes it's, people, the whole thing on Marty, he can't get it done in the playoffs. Well, what was the book on Andy Reid? Can't get that Super Bowl. Wins a lot of regular season games, can't get that Super Bowl. And then he goes to another team and they stick with him. They lose in the playoffs a couple times with Alex Smith, and then you get the right. Sometimes you just need all of the ingredients. And I thought, like, I think it was before Marty went to, it was either before or after he was in Washington, and he got one season there, and they started off really badly, and then they finished the season 5-3, and then he fired him. Like, I just think he was a great coach. I wish they had kept him, and I think they would have had more success than they did with North Turner. But he's very fondly remembered in Kansas City and beloved. He was our kind of guy, our kind of football coach, and brought success to a team that didn't have it for a very long time leading up to his tenure. So, rest in peace, Marty, and best to his family. Okay, so let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball for the Chargers. As you mentioned earlier, it's a little more seasoned. You got veterans like Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Derwin James returning. They weren't very good last season on defense. Okay against the run, not great against the pass, injuries again, all that stuff. But, like, are you more confident in that side of the ball despite, them not being great last season? I mean, Harbaugh is a defensive guy. His teams always play great defense.
I'm more confident than last year because it's hard to imagine a defense that's worse than Brandon Staley's defense. That man, for being a defensive guru, just did not know how to coach to his players. He had his specific scheme, and whether you sucked at it or you were great at it, like the 2020 Rams, he was going to call that scheme, and he just didn't have the personnel to run that scheme. So I'm not optimistic. I don't think this is a defense that's necessarily going to be top 10. I think it'll just have fewer of the blow up moments as last year. I think it'll just be more competent. Will it, I still think it's probably in like the 16 to 20 range in terms of like points allowed and yards allowed, but that's fine. That's better. The numbers last year are better they look better on paper than they really were. Cause anytime they played a competent offense, it was just, there was no chance for the Chargers. That being said, I love this pass rush. I think the Chargers pass rush is one of the most overlooked just position groups in the entire NFL. Khalil Mack coming off a career year. I think he naturally is going to regress a little bit. He's getting older. I think pretending like he's going to be the same guy back-to-back years when you're in your mid-30s in the NFL, that's setting yourself up for failure. But then Bosa, if he stays healthy, that's a huge shot in the arm. Tuli Tuipulotu, he's a great second-year edge rusher who can kick inside, and he's kind of an overlooked player on this Chargers defense. And they also signed Bud Dupree. So I think you have four guys there. You have Morgan Fox on the interior defensive line, who had some of the best pass rushing numbers for like interior defensive linemen. Sucks against the run, but he could rush the quarterback. I think that group is going to cause a lot of havoc on quarterbacks, and that's going to be where this defense thrives, because I don't love the secondary. Even with Derwin's never been like a good coverage safety. He's someone you want to put in the box. He's someone you want to put in the line of scrimmage. When you have him just playing that 2-shell zone defense that Staley had him playing, like, that's when he sucked. That's when he was horrible. So I think they'll use him better, but I still think the secondary's a little suspect. So we need the pass rush to really come home on the quarterback. So I think it'll be better. I still think we're a whiles away though.
What's your opinion on Asante Samuel Jr.?
He's someone who needs to take a step up in my eyes. He has moments where it's like, dang, this guy has potential. He's a ball hawk. But as is the case with every ball hawk, there's always the other side of the sword where you get burned and everything. So I'm really interested to see how he is with Jesse Minter, the new defensive coordinator, because how much of those issues were Brandon Staley related and scheme related, and how much of it was really, Zont. That's what we call him, Zont. So I'm intrigued. I think he's someone to watch out for. He could be really, really good and take a leap where he looks like a legitimate cornerback one, or he might be someone where it shows Charger fans that they need to draft a corner in the first round next year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think he can do it. And if they get that pass rush going, that's going to a guy like that, a ball hawk player like that, could really help out. I think my theory about, letting the offensive guys go, bringing back the defensive guys, I think Harbaugh is looking. He knows it's a rebuilding year. He wants to start getting his guys in, evaluate what's there, and he wants to set a tone of like how they're going to play football. And yeah, the running game stuff that can come, but it's going to start with defense. And he's got some dogs on the defensive side of the ball. Some might be a little bit older, but they can. I think, I know these defensive coordinator types and these defensive guys, like they want tone setters on the defense, establish an attitude, and so I get why you keep some of those guys and just be like, yeah, let's bring in some younger guys. Let's set a tone with the veteran leadership. It's why the Chiefs, when they weren't really good on defense and they lost in 2018 to the Patriots in the AFC Championship game, they went and they got Tyrann Mathieu because they're like, we need this kind of guy. And they got Frank
You need a dog.
Clark. Right. Yeah. You need the dogs. So I get it. All right, let's move on. So what about the under the radar guys? Guys that, we talked a lot about guys that most Chiefs fans know, names that are familiar. Are there any under the radar players on the Chargers? You mentioned a couple guys that you think Chiefs fans should be concerned about moving forward.
Yeah, I kind of tipped my hand a little bit there. I mentioned Kamani Vidal at running back, and I also mentioned Tuli Tuipulotu at edge rusher, defensive line. Those were the two guys where I think they make a bigger impact, than people are expecting. At linebacker, we have Dan Henley, who's entering his second year in the league. Didn't really play much last year, but looked really polished in the preseason and training camp. And I think he's someone, even though the Chargers drafted Junior Colson in the third round, I think Henley's going to get a lot of playing time and a lot of chances to prove himself. I really like what he could bring to this defense. Besides that trio, it's hard. There might be like a random, there's this undrafted guy named Zach Hines, who's like 6'7", and, I'm just falling in love with him because we don't have any great tight ends. So it's like, oh, who could this guy be? But outside of that, there's not like a concrete dark horse that it's like, oh, look at this guy, because I think a lot of the guys who were circling as maybe someone who can contribute more, it's out of necessity. It's the Lad McConkeys of the world. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
The running back and the edge rusher, and then, see what happens there. Maybe they could luck out with a 6th-round pick. Tarheeb Still, he reported to have been excelling in minicamp. He's a slot corner prospect. Will he start in his first year? I don't know, but the early returns seem to be there. So they need to hit early on one of these like day 3 picks. And then it's like, okay, see what we're cooking with.
Yeah. Mile High Luke asks in the chat, he wants to know if you think Vidal will have a role right away or if it'll take an injury to Gus or J.K. Dobbins.
It'll take an injury. As high as I am on him, Dobbins and Edwards are both Ravens guys. The GM is a Ravens guy. The offensive coordinator is a Ravens guy. And I think we see that all the time in the NFL. Coaches, GMs, everything, they'll give their guys chances before the rookie who has 4 more years under contract. So it'll take an injury. But if you're in like a 16-team fantasy league and it's a dynasty league or something, I would recommend, taking Kamani in the 15th, 16th round or something, stashing him, seeing what could happen.
Yeah, especially because you're not looking at the guys in front of them being like, oh, they're going to be there forever. They could both get hurt by week 4. So Angry Junkin German asks, do you expect the Chargers to make a move for a guy like Higgins next year after cleaning cap this year?
I can see it. A lot of it depends how this year goes. I wouldn't rule it out, though. In previous years with the previous regime, well, maybe I shouldn't say that because the Telesco loved to spend in free agency, but it does feel like the Chargers are in a prime position to either sign someone or maybe even trade for one of these disgruntled receivers. Or, Brandon Ayuk is someone who it's probably not happening this year, but he's someone who I've like circled like, man, he could look really good in powder blue. I'd love to see that happen. But I think, Harbaugh signed a 5-year deal. He's not getting any younger. I think they want to win quickly. So if there's an opportunity to add an elite talent like that and not give up too much, I think they'll do it. Now, depends on the price. I don't see them trading a 1st-rounder, but if, someone's available or they can get Higgins, I think they'll definitely, test the waters and maybe see what they can do.
Okay. Lauren Shanks asks, and this I'll pair this with one of my last questions for you. What are Ellie's biggest areas of needs heading into camp? And are there any camp battles that you're really looking forward to?
Biggest needs, all the skill positions on offense.
Yeah.
It's tough because there's not really a way to address those needs anymore, unless something crazy happens. But they just need pass catchers. They need reliable people. McConkey and Palmer, we talked about them, but the tight end room has Will Dissly, who's a really, really good blocker, can't catch. Hayden Hurst, who's had multiple concussions, and I don't know what happens with him. Donald Parham, who's kind of injury prone. So they just don't. The Chargers don't really have like any blue chippers. It's kind of like a Bill Simmons thing that he always talks about, where even on defense, like they got Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa and Derwin, but Bosa has his injury concerns. Derwin wasn't the best last year. Mack's getting older. Like we mentioned, they just need that dog. And there's so many different roster needs where it could kind of come anywhere, where whether it's someone stepping up or someone, if someone's disgruntled and you make a trade or whatever happens, if they could just find that dog somewhere on either side of the ball, I think that's huge. And Jim Harbaugh, setting the tone, setting the culture, and the team kind of, living up to what its potential is. As far as roster battles, I'm excited to see how the wide receiver room shakes out, mostly to see if like our McConkey projections are correct or if QJ actually has like the breakout in him. And the cornerback position also out of necessity. I think there's a lot of guys in there who could get playing time, who maybe aren't starters on other defenses or have a chance this year because the room is wide open. You have Asante Samuel Jr. And besides that, I think anything else could happen. They signed Christian Fulton, who Charger fans are hyping up, even though he was like the 4th worst corner by coverage stats last year in the league, was worse than Michael Davis, who Charger fans ran out of LA. So I don't really understand the hype there, but I think that room's wide open and they kind of need a young guy to step up right away and be good. So I'm excited to see how that shakes out and see if anyone has what it takes. Cause if not, it's going to be a really easy secondary to pass on.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you're watching the Arrowhead Addict podcast. Finishing up here with Jason Reed from Bolt Beat. If you want to get more Chargers intel, make sure you go to boltbeat.com. Or if there's somebody in your life you really don't like and they're looking for an NFL team to root for, send them to boltbeat.com. They'll get great coverage. They'll become a Chargers fan. Just a couple more questions from me. This last one, or next to last, penultimate question. I see some people on the internet, Chiefs fans and other NFL fans, saying that they think that Justin Herbert is overrated and overhyped. I vehemently disagree with that. But what's your take on that?
I couldn't disagree more. The guy's special. I mean, he's not Patrick Mahomes. Let's just get that out of the window. Mahomes is in his own tier. He's not even part of the conversation. Just remove him. Like, no one's going to touch him. No one's going to come close to him. He is what he is. Outside of Mahomes, like yes, Herbert hasn't had the team success that someone like Joe Burrow has, but Herbert also didn't have a receiving core with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Joe Mixon in a defense that was top 5 and bailed Burrow out when he had maybe some bad games. I don't know, just saying. Josh Allen, I think you have to put Josh Allen ahead of Herbert just because of what he's accomplished. I feel like Allen's done more for his team than Burrow maybe has for some of his success. Not to this coming to anti-Joe Burrow thing, but I think Herbert's in that top 5 group. I think he's very much should be in the conversation for like elite quarterbacks. And like, look, people want to point at the numbers last year without realizing that he broke a finger on one hand in like week 2 and then broke his other finger in like week 7 and also had no rushing game, had injury. Like hasn't been put in a worse. There's very few quarterbacks who have been put in worse situations the last few years. The year before, he fractured his rib cartilage against the Chiefs, week 2 of the season, played through it the whole time, didn't miss a game, an injury that Marcus Stroman got the same year in baseball and missed like 2 months with. Baseball's a little bit different, but still, and I think the last time he had a full season where he had his weapons, the offensive line wasn't hurt, was 2021. You look at those numbers, he set franchise highs in every passing stat. Like, he was absolutely remarkable. So I don't know, the Herbert hate, it's one of those things, it's like the Matt Stafford hate back in the day. Like, people just got to latch onto something and they look at the team success and the quarterback, he is part of it. Is he perfect? No, he could be better in 2-minute situations, but he's an elite quarterback. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah, I mean, it's, most Chiefs fans saw Justin Herbert's first start close up, and it was very clear immediately, just like it was with Patrick Mahomes. And I'm not comparing the two, but like, when a guy has it, you can just see it. It jumps off the screen at you. The way they keep their eyes downfield, the way they deal with pressure. I mean, I can't remember what game it was. It was a couple years ago, where the Chargers they could not protect him. I think they were playing, maybe it was a playoff game, or they were playing for the playoffs. Maybe it was against the Raiders, and they were just beating the hell out of him, and he led them on this drive.
Oh, that was 2021, week 18. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right at the end of the season. I mean, he was getting destroyed every single play, and he kept standing in there, delivering the ball, getting up, led them on the drive. That, I mean, I was already a fan of his talent, but when I saw that, I was like, this dude, I mean, I hope they never figure it out with him, because like he's got the grit. Like, I see somebody in the chat calling him soft. No way, man.
No,
that dude, he is, maybe he's been a little injury prone or he's had some bad luck, but he is anything but soft. And the rib cartilage injury you mentioned, he got creamed on that hit, smacking the solar plexus. So, I mean, I'm with you, man. I think he's really, really good. I think Harbaugh, I don't know, Harbaugh is probably not the coach I would have picked for Justin Herbert, but like, I would have picked Harbaugh over any other available coaching candidate. You want a really good coach. So get the right offensive coordinator for him. He'll be fine. He's really good. And I think you're right. People look at the team success, and, they do it with They do it with Lamar Jackson. They're doing it with Brock Purdy. It's the system. Like at a certain point, like, look, you just have to give a guy credit for what he does. Like, does he play at a high level? Everybody's in a system. Every team has a system. They run a system. If you have a bad coach like Staley, you might not perform as well within that system. You tell me if you give Justin Herbert to Andy Reid, Justin Herbert's not going to go out there and throw for 5,000 yards. I guarantee you he would. I guarantee you he'd have a 5,000-yard season. Like, so, it's crazy. You can see the talent. Trust your eyes. Lamar might not be a traditional quarterback, but people always ripping him down. Like, the dude's won 1 billion games. Like, what do you want him? Like, what do you want him to do? Maybe he never gets over the hump. Has playoffs. Josh Allen, like people that just compare everybody. And I love him. Everybody, they just compare him to Mahomes, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, that's
unfair. Yeah,
it's not fair. It's just not. It's like they're doing it right now with C.J. Stroud. I was tweeting about that yesterday. Like, how can C.J. Stroud surpass Patrick Mahomes? I'm like, whoa, that's like grossly unfair to C.J. Stroud to be talking like that right now. But hey, it's July in the NFL world, right?
Well, and we talk about a lot of these quarterbacks like their career's over. We say Lamar is bad at this, Josh Allen's bad at this. It's like these guys are 28, 29. Like, they might completely change their perception 5 years from now, and then it's a different conversation. So. And then with Herbert, he's had 4 different offensive coordinators in 5 years. Dating back to Oregon, I think he had 3 offensive coordinators. So this guy's learned like 7 offenses in the last decade. I'd point me to the quarterback who's going to win MVPs in that, besides Patrick Mahomes, because he probably still would. And I'm always, my argument is if you put Justin Herbert on the Dolphins or you put him on the 49ers, like I like Tua. I shouldn't say like. I like Brock Purdy. Tua's okay. But you put Herbert on those teams and like, Chiefs fans are suddenly sweating. Like, I think the 49ers beat the Chiefs last year if they have a healthy Justin Herbert at quarterback. I don't know. That's just my take, but I don't know. Maybe I'm becoming too much of an enemy now by saying that.
Well, look, I mean, it's when you get to that level where you're like, that was the hardest road any team I think has ever had to a Super Bowl. The Chiefs did last year, which was incredible because they were severely undermanned on the offensive side of the football, and they still managed to do it. And that speaks to the greatness of Mahomes. But even then, it's like Barnwell's right. The 49ers far and away have a better skill position group than the Kansas City Chiefs, right? But the Chiefs finally had an elite defense. They matched up okay. And it's a handful of plays. There are a handful of plays. I could pick out 10 plays for you. And if they had gone the other way, Patrick Mahomes would have no Super Bowls. Does that mean that Patrick Mahomes is not brilliant at quarterback? No, of course not. He's still brilliant at quarterback, but that's the NFL, man. Like when you're in the playoffs, when you're going against other elite teams, it just comes down to a few plays. And, Joe Montana, same thing. You could pick out a handful of plays. Joe Montana doesn't have as many Super Bowls as he has, but it's like, that's how you build your legacy. You get credit for what you did, not what didn't happen. And he made the plays. They made the plays. And it is what it is. I could sit here and complain all day about D4 jumping off sides and be like, Patrick Mahomes would have 4 Super Bowls right now if it wasn't for that. Yeah, but he jumped off sides. So just let the careers play out. Let's see where the chips fall at the end. Enjoy watching these guys too. Like, I don't like the Chargers, but like, you got to just enjoy. I love football, man. Like, I want to watch that guy play, and then I want to watch my team beat him, and I want him to play great when we do beat him. So it feels even better.
My homework for everyone watching and listening after this podcast is over, go to YouTube, look up Chargers Vikings Week 3 highlights from last year, and then come back and tell me Justin Herbert's not an elite quarterback. Like, that game's insane. So you don't luck into those kind of games. So that's my homework for everyone.
Love it. Okay. Before we get out of here, as our regular viewers know, and do us a favor if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up. Patty's Power Rankings, a segment that has not happened in a while since my wife went into labor, but here we are, we're back. And I thought, well, what could I rank? Sometimes the guest does it with me, sometimes they don't. Usually it's food or something fun like that, but I was like, what could be fun to rank with Jason? And I thought, well, why don't we rank our top 5 most hated Chargers/Chiefs? So I'll give you my 5 Chargers that I hate the most, and you give me your 5 Chiefs that you hate the most. From any era, not right now, but from any era, however you want to do it. And let us know in the chat, if there are any Chargers fans, have at it against the Chiefs. But if you're all Chiefs fans out there, let us know all time, like, who are the 5 Chargers that you just like, couldn't stand for whatever reason, because they're really good, because they were jerks in your view on the field, all that. So I'll kick us off. Since you're the guest, I want to give you the final word here. I'll kick us off. So number 5 for me, some people might be surprised he's not higher on the list, but it's LaDainian Tomlinson. And it's just because he was so damn good. I mean, it wasn't like I had there are a lot of guys on this list I have a ton of respect for. And it was because they got us, man. They just always got us as a Chiefs fan. And that's one thing that can make you despise a guy, right? Like Patrick Mahomes, I think we can all agree, super likable guy, down to earth, seems nice, loves his wife, loves his family. You know what I mean? We'd like to have a beer with him. But like the more that he wins, the more NFL fan bases are just going to be like, I can't stand this guy. I can't stand him. You're tired of losing to him. Like, I get it. And that's how I felt about LT. Number 4, Phillip Rivers. I was down the line on Phillip Rivers. When I was younger, I really I hated Phillip Rivers so much because he talks all that trash, and like he's always John out there. And I just hate him. I used to make fun of him all the time when I ran the website. And then as I got older, I like begrudgingly liked Phillip Rivers because I matured a little bit. And like, even though I still disliked him, we finally started beating him. And he cracked me up. Like, he's a funny guy, the trash he's talking about. My favorite was so the first Chiefs game I ever saw live, because I didn't grow up in Kansas City, was in 2010 when they opened the new Arrowhead, and Todd Haley's first year with the team. Chiefs finished 10-6 that year and won the AFC West. And it was that opener, and they played the Chargers. The Chargers down there on the goal line, and it was 4th down, and they went for it. And the Chiefs, Romeo Crennel was the defense coordinator. He just had like 4 guys surround Antonio Gates, and the Chiefs ended up winning, and they couldn't get the completion. But during that game, it was very loud. The crowd was really jacked up, and they were optimistic about the team. And there were a few, they helped draw a few false start penalties on the Chargers. And at one point, Rivers like kicked the football and was screaming at his center. And it was I was so delighted for that. And that's like peak Phillip Rivers. So Phillip Rivers, number 4. Number 3, the late great Junior Seau. I don't think I need to explain why I didn't like Junior Seau. What an unbelievable football player. Number 2 for me might surprise a lot of people. Mike Williams. Mike Williams.
Why?
That dude just cannot guard him. Like, for whatever reason, whenever he played the Chiefs, he turned into like Michael Jordan. Like, he was just he was mossing. It didn't matter. Like, good cornerbacks, bad cornerbacks, like they would just throw it up. And that dude, he killed us. I swear to God, every time we played, like it's like we'd win the game. Mike Williams was still like 230 yards receiving or something against us. Drove me out of my mind. Very glad he is gone and not with the Chargers anymore. And I was glad, not on a personal level, but like the injuries, if he wasn't injured as much, he probably would have, done even more damage to us. So I didn't like Mike Williams for that. And number 1 is the only guy on the list that I really don't like, and that is Sean Merriman. Hated Sean Merriman, especially because he was all roided up and he put this horrendous hit on Priest Holmes and basically ended Priest Holmes' career. Like, he was never the same after he came back from that injury. And it really, really pissed me off when I found out he was all roided up, because I already didn't like him. He annihilated Priest Holmes, and it's like, okay, whatever, fine. I can begrudgingly respect that if it's a football play. But if I find out you're all juiced up, like, that's going to make me that's it. The respect is gone. So Sean Merriman, number 1 for me. All right. Any comments on those before you can lay into your Chiefs now?
No, I looked up your schedule this year to make sure you guys weren't playing the Jets. So you're good. No Mike Williams PTSD this year.
Yeah, right. Maybe in the playoffs, we'll see.
Oh, that'd be a nightmare. So I actually ranked my 5 most hated coworkers, and I had everyone with the Arrowhead Addict podcast for making fun of Charger fans. Did I do the wrong
nice.
thing?
That's okay. That's fine. That's fine.
No, my top 5. I have some interesting picks here. Some are pretty self-explanatory. Number 5, Tyreek Hill. Dude's just a monster. I'll never forget. I think it wasn't Mahomes' first start, because he started that week 17 game when he was still a backup for Alex Smith. But I think it was 2018, I believe, week 1, when Mahomes just torched us, and it was Tyreek Hill who torched us. Just had an insane game, and even now that he's on the Dolphins, like, he always does something wonky against us. Last time we played them, there was that fumble where the running back fumbled near the goal line and he just like scooped it up and took it 70 yards for a touchdown. Like he's just one of those guys. You respect his talent and everything, but like the Chargers have never had an answer for Tyreek Hill. So when the Chiefs traded him, very, very happy for that.
I bet.
Number 4, this one's a little bit of a personal gripe. Great player, seems like a great human, great person, would love to meet him, have a non-alcoholic beer with him. Tony Gonzalez. And that's mostly because I feel like Antonio Gates doesn't get the credit he deserves because he played at the same time as Tony Gonzalez. Gates notably left off the Hall of Fame ballot his first year, which makes absolutely no sense. He's a top 5, 6 tight end of all time, and you just snub him from the Hall of Fame. And I think Tony Gonzalez is part of the reason why. It's kind of like how Phillip Rivers played at the same time as Brady and Manning, so he kind of gets overlooked. Antonio Gates gets overlooked because of Tony Gonzalez. So for that, he's on my list, even though he seems like a great guy. Number 3, Mahomes. It's just Mahomes. I respect him. I said he's one of one. I never thought anyone would ever come close to being the GOAT, challenging Brady, and it feels like Mahomes is on a fast track to doing that. Most talented quarterback of all time. I'm willing to say that now. Obviously doesn't have the legacy of Brady yet, but in terms of ceiling, I don't think we've ever had a quarterback as good as prime Patrick Mahomes. And it sucks that he's on a division rival, but it is special to watch him and watch some of the stuff he does. So it's a respectful hate, a mutual respect there. And unfortunately, got to play him twice a year.
I'm sure 2, you just hope he doesn't play as long as Brady. That's got to be the worst. For the people in the AFC East fans were probably just like, my God, like when will this reign of terror end? Yeah.
I just got to hope Mahomes, I don't know, maybe he leaves. Maybe he goes, I don't know. He's from Texas. Is he like a Texans fan or something? Well, they got CJ Stroud now, so I don't know. I think we're stuck with him, unfortunately. Number 2, someone I actually had to look up because I don't know who actually delivered this tackle, but I wanted to include him on the list. Mike Dana, because he is the one who fractured Justin Herbert's rib cartilage 2 years ago and started this whole nonsense of whether or not he's an elite quarterback. Ever since then, before that, Herbert was the darling. He was the analytics darling. Everyone loved him. Ever since that one singular moment, that's when the doubt started creeping in. That's when Emmanuel Acho started calling him a social media quarterback. That's when all this stuff happened. Mike Dana, I'm sure you're a great guy. I don't even know if you're on the Chiefs anymore, but you caused this. So he's number 2 on my list right now.
He's still around. They brought him back.
All right. Well, hopefully he doesn't injure Justin Herbert again. And number 1, I told you you'd never be able to guess this. And that's because I don't know if he actually ever played for you guys. I mean, he was on the team. He won a Super Bowl with you guys, but did he play a snap? I don't know. That's Melvin Gordon, former Chargers running back. Had his contract hold out when he was on the Chargers. Didn't handle that situation great. He was trying to be like Le'Veon Bell. It just didn't work well. Was already kind of despised because of that, because he wanted to hold out. And then when he came back, he wasn't very good. And then when he leaves the Chargers, he makes that comment heading into the 2020 season about how he's used to not playing with any fans. So he would be fine in Denver. So I really despise Denver, Melvin Gordon. And then he went to the Chiefs. So he's applicable for this list. I will say he did dunk on me once. I wrote an article, or it was just a tweet, I believe, on Bolt Beat about how Melvin Gordon was the kid who didn't do anything in the group project, but still got an A, and he was celebrating it. And then he quote tweeted that with a picture of him with the Lombardi Trophy smoking a cigar. And it went viral. It was all over, social media, and different websites are writing articles about it, just dunking on me. So, a little personal there. He got me on that one. I'll give him credit, but definitely number 1 on this list.
Yeah, that's a good one, man. I think he did get a couple carries during the regular season. If anybody out there's got the stats up, I think he definitely didn't contribute in the actual Super Bowl. He just was like, but he was that, what was obnoxious about him was that he was like big time celebrating, like,
yes,
like he had done something. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you kind of like when you're one of those guys, or like you're the backup quarterback and you play a snap all year, like be happy, like you contributed, right? Like you in the meeting room and all that stuff. But like, I don't think there was probably very much even behind the scenes that Melvin Gordon did that contributed to the Chiefs winning that Super Bowl. But then he was all out front, like, he did. I think he actually said like I was carried, as Michael points out. Kind of hilarious. But hey, man, I guess like, what if the Chiefs like were going to give me a Super Bowl ring, or like I was, working in the lunchroom or something for the team and I got a ring, I'd have been so, I'm not even involved with the team. And I was celebrating like I actually had something to do with it. So I jumped in a pool, all that stuff. So Angry Junket German says, I don't think he was even active for the playoffs. I think you're right. Like, I don't think he was even suited up. He he was just there in case something catastrophic happened.
Yeah, and to dunk on me on social media, apparently.
Dunk on you. Yeah, you got to be careful when you try to criticize these players on Twitter. Like, they got some thin skins out there, man. They'll come for you. And even if you're right, it doesn't matter. Like, then all their sycophants will come and attack you. Lauren Shanks weighed in. He said Stan Humphries, Antonio Gates, Dan Fouts, Kellen Winslow, Sean Merriman. Good one. Angry Drunken German says Humphries and Merriman are up there for sure. And that safety they had that went to the Pats, who's he talking about?
Adrian Phillips, if we're talking recently.
I'm not sure. There was one guy there was one safety you guys had. I can't remember his name. Who
Rodney Harrison?
I don't think it was Rodney, who always picked off Matt Castle. Like, it was just like, and it was like, he never even really had to do anything to get the pick. Like, he just had to stand there and it would sail to him. I can't remember who it was. I was trying to remember that earlier today. But that, I was like, maybe I'll put him on a list. One, I couldn't find out who it was. I couldn't remember exactly. And two, I just realized that it was actually Matt Castle who I wanted to put on the list. So, who seems like a great guy, just wasn't a great quarterback. Have you ever seen his K-Swiss commercial?
I have not. No.
Oh, look up Matt Castle K-Swiss commercial. It's some of his best work, better than anything he ever did on the football field. All right, everybody. We're well past the hour mark. I gotta get Jason out of here. Jason, thank you so much for coming on, man. I know we're gonna have you back on during the season as things heat up to get your insight on what's going on with the Chargers and the race in the AFC West. Really appreciate you coming by, and shout out to all of our members and all of the people in the comments who are asking questions, participating in this offseason doldrums of the offseason show. If you're interested in becoming a member of the Arrowhead Addict family, check out the link in the description. We've got a private Discord. We're going to be firing up the Fantasy Football League here pretty soon. It's a really great community of like-minded Chiefs fans, and it's a great way to support the content that we do here. We are part of a big company, but every dime we make from you guys, we pump right back into the show, paying our extra hosts, investing in the product, because that's all we're trying to do is create the best experience for you guys. So we appreciate your support. Again, thank you to Jason Reed. Thank you to producer Richard. I will be back next Thursday for our regularly scheduled show as training camp is about to heat up. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.